Well, thank you, Marty. What a great conversation that just took place on Web 3.0. It's very exciting stuff to see, but we're going to bring it back down to earth here a little bit and bring it back to the family office environment and talk about best practices for the family office. Joining me are Clint Haggard, who is sitting there. Clint, you want to give a little wave or?
Hey, yeah.
There you go. Just let everybody see you there. Michael Cabanas, who is sitting at the table next to Samy Dwek. Clint is the president of Burgher Haggard. Michael Cabanas is with Fiduciary Trust, and Samy Dwek is founder and CEO of the Family Office Doctor. So this is going to be a very entertaining conversation. I know we had a little practice session the other day, and that went for virtually an hour. So I don't think this is going to be too hard to fill up the time, and it was great conversation. So just a little background here. We're going to be talking about different things, the differences between a single and multifamily office, governance, succession from one generation to the next, trust, technology, transparency, all those great things that you want to know about. My name is Mark Heil. I'll be moderating this panel. I'm institutional sales for Pacific Premier Trust, a division of Pacific Premier Bank. We are one of the largest and most experienced non-fiduciary alternative asset custodians. And I'm looking forward to doing this. But one of the things I have to do, and you heard Marty talking about, having horns grow out of my head when I need to read my disclosure statement, working for a trust and for a bank, means I have to tell you that information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended as and may not be relied upon as tax, legal, investment, or other advice. Pacific Premier Trust performs the duties of a custodian and as such does not evaluate, recommend, or endorse any particular investment opportunity. You're advised to consult your own professional advisors for specific guidance regarding your investments. Investments are not FDIC insured and are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. And to the extent that I offer an opinion, please understand that's my opinion. I'm not speaking for the bank or for the trust company. So for the next hour or so, we're going to be having a great discussion up here. We're going to have a dialogue. It's going to be more like a conversation. Don't be shy. We invite you to join into this. If a thought pops into your mind or a question pops in your mind, blurt it out there and get it on the table. If you're online, same offer is offered out to you. Just type in something in the chat area. I'll see it and I'll make sure we get it asked. So with that, I really feel fortunate to have the people that we have here online. I think they're very talented, very smart individuals with a lot of experience in working with family offices. So I'd like each of our panelists just to take a minute or so and introduce yourselves, give a little bit about your background, and we'll take it from there. So Clint, why don't you lead us off since you're online here?
Appreciate it. Glad to be here, guys, and contribute however I can. I kind of wear three hats at these kind of type of panels. The first hat, and this isn't in any order, but I have an accounting firm that we basically do accounting services for family offices or high net worth, family systems. We don't do any investment management or anything like that. We're bill pay and payroll and, bank credit card categorization and all the process related stuff. That's one hat that I wear. And the other hat is I've done consulting for probably 20 plus years for family systems that are thinking through transition, generational transition, need better communication, usually a little bit more formal governing systems, succession planning for key man or key family, kind of transitions. I've helped a lot of families here in Texas, mainly with that. From that, I'm also sixth generation to a family here. Actually, my mom's family and my dad's family, both sixth generation. They both still manage assets at a cousin's level. So I've just grown up into multifamily asset ownership environments for good or bad. And that's what led me to consulting and all that. So Happy to help, contribute any way I can, but just those are the hats I wear.
Sounds fantastic, Clint. Samy, I'm going to throw it out to you next. Why don't you take a few seconds to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Samy Dwek. I was born in the north of England, as Dave pointed out earlier. Spent 26 years in finance, grew up in a family business, tried to avoid the family business, ran to banking. Probably that was a big mistake. Spent my years in institutional asset management, private banking, and institutional trading. 26 years of doing all of that across the globe, most of it with JP Morgan. I built their businesses in the Middle East, in most of the emerging markets. I decided to become a banker in recovery. And about 4 years ago, set up the Family Office Doctor to work with families and family offices to deal with the emotional side of money. So working with families on governance, family disputes, looking at how to plan for the next generations, coming in and auditing the family offices, seeing what are they doing right, what can they do better, are they set up for the right reasons, do they have the right governance in place for multiple generations? So in essence, that is me.
Well, there's got to be a juicy story in there when it comes to family squabbles. Could you share one?
Oh God, where would you like me to start? I've seen, unfortunately, and I really mean unfortunately, I have honestly seen it all. I have dealt with a young man that committed suicide because he couldn't deal with the pressure of dealing to have to take over the family business. I've dealt with a son trying to kill his mother when daddy died to steal the family assets, and I had to intervene. I've literally seen it all, and not all of it is great. It's a very difficult place. Families have a multitude of issues. When you layer on top of that money, you just exacerbate and multiply the depth of the problems. Unfortunately, a lot of the families I get involved with, I mean, some of them great, it's coming in doing tweaking, but many, there's substance abuse issues, there's mental health issues that come out of the pressures that are created within the family network, within the pressures of having to come in, step up and take over. And I think one of the hardest things of all of this, and I'm sorry to overstep my time, is that there's nothing there for the families to help them through it. And so I've now designed a course with the University of Miami that we will be teaching next year on families and businesses, an exec certificate at UM in March, to help families prepare and deal with those situations so that there is more of an infrastructure and a peer group for them.
That sounds fantastic. Will you distribute information on that course so people that are interested can get it out? Does Marty have the info on that?
We can get that through Marty, absolutely.
Sounds
Marty already
great.
has the details.
Yeah, I think we shared it last one. We'll do it again. Yeah.
Michael, why don't you pick it up and introduce yourself and talk about fiduciary trust and your experiences with family office.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark. And thank you again, Marty, for allowing us to host this year once again. What a great turnout. We're definitely back to normal. I know last year we did the same thing and there's a lot, fewer people. So congratulations. Fiduciary Trust, I run the Miami office. I've been with the firm for 13 years. Before that, I was at larger institutions like JP Morgan and Bank of New York Mellon. And we have offices in 11 different cities throughout the US, but headquartered in New York, founded in 1931 by a group of 4 families that felt the larger banks were not being objective and more focused on the bank's profits and the family's well-being. And fast forward, so today it's still the same issues that we're dealing with, and we'll get into them later today. And that's pretty much fiduciary trust. We do 2 things. We manage assets. We are individual stock selectors. We create custom portfolios, individual stocks. When we meet a client, we start that day, and depending on what we see in the market, we'll start building a portfolio. We also do manager due diligence and selection. We also work with alternatives as well. And then we serve as corporate trustee and help clients with estate planning and tax planning. And
Great.
We have several, out of this office, we have 64 families we deal with. I would say 10 are family offices. I'll call that.
Well, very interesting. Just very quickly, when you're managing the assets, do you charge on AUM or how do you charge?
We charge them on AUM. before there was a fee, we say we start at 1% and go down to 75 basis points, and it'll after 10 million, it'll come down. But nowadays, we really get to know the client, because if they're going to be more cash oriented or cash management or fixed income, we will customize the fee for them as well. So we get to know the client. We don't talk about fees initially. Once we understand what we're going to be doing for this family, we'll come up with a fee. Usually we are one of the least expensive out there, but we do share a full kind of fee. Once we quote a price, it's all inclusive, or there's no additional fees or fund fees that are going to be underneath. You're not going to see those.
And fees have changed, right? Because now you've got a lot more passive investments, which didn't really exist before. It was all active management.
Yeah. So we do both active management. Well, like traditionally we're an active manager, but nowadays things is different, and passive investments also makes a lot of sense.
Samy, I'm going to ask you the same thing for your consulting work. How do you charge?
So I charge like a lawyer would. I charge by the hour.
Okay.
Very simple. Because regardless of size of wealth, the complexity is the complexity. So I charge a very simple per the hour fee.
And Clint, you're going to ask you the same question here.
Yeah, same. We're just time-based. We have a fixed fee, but it's based on who's on the team, how much time we think it'll take. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. And, hopefully we've got enough, years under us that we know about how long it'll take, but it's time. Yep.
So give me an idea, because we hear a lot about the successful family office. And what does that look like compared to an unsuccessful family office? And it should. So, Samy, why don't you?
Mark. Thank you. And I love you too.
Well, I know nobody is more candid than you, Samy. So I gotta just love it.
Yeah, you know me too well. So look, it's honestly, it's not a complicated recipe. It's the key to success, in my humble opinion, in family offices are a couple. One, family office should not be led by a family member, because that is the first ingredient for disaster. Because if family members are leading the family office, other family members are going to go, look, you lost me money, you made the wrong decision, why did you do that? You're getting paid more than me because you're overseeing the assets. So that is, I would say, although they may be very capable, it will create an underlying feeling of discontent. Communication. Okay. It's amazing how many families don't have well-structured family meetings, regular family meetings. And a family meeting is not, let's get together and go on holiday and sit in a room. It's a meeting that is well organized and orchestrated, where you ensure that there is clear communication. You ensure you get every family member involved around the table. And if that means that you have to separate the family members into groups and then bring them back, what we do is we come in and we mediate. We ensure that their voices are heard. Again, if you don't allow the younger generation to have the opportunity to express their views, wrong or right, then that is another source of discontent. So enabling and hearing family members is a surefire way of ensuring or reducing the chance of conflict. And then how you deal with the in-laws, because don't discount the in-laws, because the in-laws are the outlaws. And most issues come from the in-laws. And I was mentioning things over dinner yesterday. Look at Cargill. Cargill is probably one of the most famous commodity trading companies out there. Who owns Cargill today? It's not the Cargill family. No. It's the Macmillans. Who are the Macmillans? It's the in-laws. They own over 70% of the business. So be mindful of the in-laws and how you include the in-laws and what information you share with the in-laws, shareholders agreements. All these types of things need to be done in a very careful manner. That is what leads to success. I wrote a paper a while ago where I basically said, I don't believe in the concept of a family office. I call it a founder's office, because they are created by the founders with the founder's money, the founder's business, the founder's ethics, the founder's outlook. Everything is around the founder, not the family. If it was a true family office, you're inclusive of all the family members. And when patriarch or matriarch passes, that's when, excuse my language, the shit hits the fan. So if you can put things in place to really make it a true family office, that is the true recipe for success. Sorry for the
Clint,
long-winded answer.
that's all right. No, that's great. It's what we were looking for. Clint, 6th generation family here. How did, does a lot of what he says ring true with you?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we hired a consultant. I was CFO, helped formalize the family, and we didn't call it a family office. We just call it a management company, but it's the same thing, I guess. And my cousin and I created that, formalized it, and grew it. And when I was leaving to go run another business, I noticed there was a lot of cousins coming to me and kind of shutting the door and saying, how does this all work? And what is this trust? And what is that? And I get all these K1s and can I work up here? I mean, what do y'all do? And, and so I was like, man, we got to have better, what Samy was saying, we got to have better communication. The people in the office know kind of what's going on, but the shareholders, the family members and their spouses make all their assumptions if you don't communicate. And that's what was happening. And thankfully there was no major damage. We started, and again, we're kind of farming and ranching that went into commercial real estate. Dallas grew over our farm and ranch. So, so we kind of quickly were adapting and changing from 1850s, mentality. And it was tough. So we're not ones to go out and hire a consultant, I mean, we don't even, so we, one thing I did that kind of got us to a consultant like Samy, which is a big step for any family system, is to bring somebody in to kind of open these doors that maybe are shut and have been shut for a while. Is we did a book club, and I think that was a good introduction for us. We picked a book that kind of represented where we were in our stage, our family stage. And we went around the room. We did one chapter a month. It took us a year to get through it. Everybody met in the conference room, and each person had a voice around the table of what that chapter meant to them, what they learned about it, how if any of it applied to them or our family, or if they wanted to learn more about something or didn't understand something. So it gave everybody an initial voice that we never had. And that led to hiring a consultant, which moved the needle for us. And so I think you've got to bring somebody in that's not a family member, that doesn't have the baggage, but has the education, the experience to help you think through design kind of thinking about transition from whether it's a founder into, siblings or, siblings to cousins. Each of those have different transition designs, and you need somebody to come in that's not a family member to help you think through that. I'm a big fan of consultants now. So, yeah.
Clint, I'm sure everybody sitting around that table has one question for you. What's the name of the book?
What's the name of the? It could be any book. We picked John Ward. I'm a big fan of John Ward. And but Ivan Landsberg. These are some of my heroes. But there's so many books out. I would say that before you pick a book up, though, kind of read about the author, because there's so many of them out there now that have a kind of a, a hidden agenda, somewhere. So, Samy, go ahead.
Yeah, so Clint, if I can, I would say there are like 5 pioneers in the space. John Wood from Harvard, Rafi Amit from Wharton, Ivan Landsberg, who has his own consulting company, Randall Carlock from INSEAD. I've worked with all these guys. They're all phenomenal. And then Peter Leach in the UK. Those are the 5 pioneers. John Wood is now retiring. He's kind of, I think, in his late 70s, 80s. I mean, he really was the beginning flame of this whole discussion. So the fact that you chose John Wood I find that really immensely interesting.
Yeah, we got lucky. And since then, I've read all his books, and they're all good. You can pick any of his books and you'd be fine. But I don't know, pick one that makes sense, have somebody read through a couple, and you know your family better than anybody. So find one that, it's not too complicated or too heavy or thick, depending on your family. That's what we do.
Fantastic. Michael, we've heard some good insights here, but I'm sure you have a couple ideas and thoughts to add to this conversation. So why don't you pick it up?
No, I could not agree more with what Clint and Samy shared regarding communication is key. And those family members who want to be part of the family office or the family business, key is showing up. 80% of success is showing up, and it's hard to be part of something and want to be part and included, and then you're not there. So not everybody whose family has to be in. I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on the second and third generation to make as much money or be as successful. So if they don't want to be there, don't force them to be there, because it's just not their time. But always have an open door. I like to start off family meetings, communication. So let's say we're sitting around the table, everybody goes around, you ask some type of question, and everybody shares a little bit. And it's amazing, whenever animosity they had the week before, or driving in, or nervous, I'm going to see my brother, I'm going to see my mother, my father, my stepbrother. Once you get them into a room and communicating, that kind of, they're not as bad as I thought. So I think getting them in their communication is key. And I think we start off by saying a successful family office, which it's, I wouldn't call it a unicorn, but it's pretty close, because we're human beings. And I haven't met one family yet, including my own, that there's not dysfunction. So I think we have to talk about the dysfunction sometimes. And Samy mentioned, add millions of dollars to that, even more issues. So more communication, more facilitating by professionals. Naming the oldest son or daughter to be the head of the family office is very, very common. A lot of times it's tough because, like Samy alluded to, they're no longer my sister or my cousin, or now they're my banker. I need to ask them, or they're my CEO, or they're my boss, and it's really tough when you have a family member in charge. And lastly, you need to have rules. Imagine running any business without rules and expectations and standards. So there's got to be rules of participation, of accountability, and sharing those. But
yeah, and can I add to that? Because I just want to come back to one thing. It's understanding the values and the vision of the family. Okay, so, and I've written a lot of stuff. So if you go on my website, you'll find all of it. Families first or business first? What is your family value? What's important to you? And the Lauder family, Estee Lauder, you go and look at them. They sat down, the two brothers, they were constantly bickering. They couldn't get on because they're so different, which is so normal with siblings. And they brought in an outside consultant, and they had a discussion on what is our value? Are we a family first, or are we a business first? And the boys decided we're family first. And what did they do? They sold Estee Lauder, they listed it, and they got out of the business. They gave up the control, because it was more important for them to be unified than to be in the business. So it's understanding the values. What's the goal? What's important? And that's, in that case, it's two people around the table. But some families are bigger. I dealt with a family in the Middle East where we were dealing with the third generation. We had 25 people around the table, right, that were old enough to have the discussion. And at the end, what we decided is that one arm of the family bought out the others to keep the peace. That was the only solution. So again, understanding the values, how do you keep the peace? What's important to the family? And to your point, professionalizing. Too many family offices, it's amazing. You see these guys, they put together the most amazing companies, so well run, so professional. In the family office, it's a family office. It's kind of like a hodgepodge, like there's no rules. You've got to professionalize it. You need to put it down on paper and say, these are the rules, shareholders agreement. This is how we're going to do it. These are the people that can be involved. If you don't meet these criteria, then you're just a passenger. You're not a driver. You've got to put it all out in the open so people understand what the rules are. There's no room for misinterpretation.
And
go on.
The big issue about the process also is you're going to have 10 members of the family. They're out there doing life. They're going to see 5 or 10 opportunities to invest in a business or in a company a month. And if you just have 80 different ideas coming in and you take one and not the other, so have some type of requirements. This is what we're looking for. A company's been around for 3 years, has this much in revenue, has this much employees, things of that nature. It kind of, you could weed through and filter through all the different opportunities to have more of a standard of what we'll look at, and we'll talk about next family meetings.
So let me give you 2 examples. Beretta, right? Everyone knows Beretta, the guns, right? They've been around, I think, 300 years. They're in the 17th generation of running the business. And they have a non-written, it's a verbal family governance in place that in every generation, they choose a family member to run the business for about 25 years. And I remember sitting down with the head of the family. This was about 10 years ago. And he was actually really funny because he goes, we sit down, they had a vote, they chose me. And I said, if you don't like it, I shoot you. And it was that simple. So that's one kind of example, but that works for Beretta because you can. And then on the other one, I saw another one where they put in place, because they had the size, they put together a PTC, a private trust company. So you have the purpose trust holding the family trust and the family assets. And then the family members, they look at what is your specialty, what are you good at? They put them in those specific businesses with targets. You meet the growth targets and I pay you a bonus. Don't meet the targets, you don't get it. And they had two brothers who had the worst sibling rivalry. And by the way, it was the fault of dad. He pitted the kids against each other. And then past his death, they still hate each other because he made them hate each other. And one was great at real estate and one was great in startups. And it was like, okay, you go and do your stuff. Here's your assets, go build. And here's your stuff, go build. And they were paid on performance. So it alleviated some of the conflict because they each had their own targets and it was measurable, right? You could understand what they're meant to do and if they were successful or not. And they didn't always make their bonuses, right? This is a multi-billion-dollar family. And it was a $10 million bonus if you did a good job. So there's lots of different ways to get there, but professionalizing and having external people on the board to keep you honest, very important.
It sounds a lot of like this is a building trust among family members and building trust amongst within the organization. So good communication, having these conversations. But I think a big part of that is, the financials around the company. And, my impression of family offices is an Excel sheet here, an Excel sheet there, an Excel sheet everywhere. So my question is, how do you consolidate that so you get consistently good information going out and create, it's one of the key pieces to creating the trust among the family members.
So the first thing is use Clint and don't use a spreadsheet. You want a professional system, okay? I worked with a family in Saudi Arabia where they came to me. Dad created the family office in 1987. And this, we're talking recently. And until recently, the CFO of the family office was putting all their assets on a spreadsheet. Everything was manually input. The family would get a 400-page report every month of, excuse my language, shit. Because it wasn't worth anything. There was nothing measurable. There was no targets. There were no goals. There was no way to understand what was going on. More importantly, there was no way to know if the data was valid. Okay. What if they made a mismanipulation, fat fingers? Very common with spreadsheets. You need a professional. And Clint, you should really come in on this because you want an accounting company. You want a software. You want an electronic feed. The less manual input, the safer your data. And then you need to have rules on what kind of MIS, management information systems, do we want? So I have a way to be able to judge what people are doing and are they doing a good job? Clint?
Yeah, I agree. You want an ERP system. So because families have a lot of entities, some of them have no activity in those entities or very little, and some have a lot, but you want to be able to consolidate those all into one picture, but also drill into them and separate them as needed without fingers touching a spreadsheet. So ERP systems, it could be Microsoft Dynamics, that's what we use, but it could be Sage, it could be, I don't know, just pick any open architecture system that you can consolidate entities up into, and it has a good reporting software. The reporting software is key because you want to build the template. Listen to the family, the CFO of the family. What are you looking for? What do you want to track every week, every month, every quarter? There's different reports for the people that are running the family office than the people that are shareholders of the family office. So those people need bigger picture reports, one pagers, to show trends and stuff like that, where the people managing the family office need to see that they need the details, the reports that, you're probably not going to understand. And if you're just a shareholder without a finance or accounting degree, then that's fine. But just having a bunch of, even if it's reports out of an ERP system, putting those on the table at a family meeting is probably can be an unhealthy thing without education of what these reports are, and having an open, kind of an open mindset for changing those reports to please the shareholders and the outside advisors. You mentioned outside advisors, huge key for family systems. It changed our lives, adding outside advisors. Seems like all of a sudden everybody's behaving because there's a non-family member in the room, so just for that in itself is great. But anyway, enough on reporting. It's crucial. Don't have the spreadsheet that somebody's got to update some column or some formula because they'll forget, or they'll be sick, or they'll have COVID or whatever. And then key man risk sets in for those reports and everything is waiting on them and they're always behind. You want to have templates built, taking the data out of the accounting system into those templates. So,
Michael, I want to switch topics here a little bit and move from the single family office environment out to the multifamily office environment and talk about what it's multifamily office. What are the additional things that a multifamily office group that's managing them should be doing?
So as soon as you mentioned multifamily office and my name, Michael, I kind of froze, and Samy kind of froze because he loves the topic of multifamily offices because
No, you love me talking about multifamily offices.
well, I just agree with you regarding what you shared. I would love Samy to talk more about this, but I'm just as passionate regarding, again, this term multifamily office, which I don't believe exists. It was just a name that was created to sound more like a marketing piece. But Samy, I'm going to throw it to you first, and then you can throw it right back.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So how can I be nice? So look, single family.
I don't want you to be nice. I want you to be honest.
Okay, well, I'm always honest. It's how. I just hope I don't upset anyone.
Private banking.
It's okay. It's like I know it's yeah. So here's the thing. RIA, so registered independent advisor, multifamily office, independent asset manager are a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay. Yeah, we all know this because at the end of the day, but I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it different. It's going to be cheaper. There'll be more transparency. Total BS. At the end of the day, they're there to manage money. And honestly, if they're small, they don't have the wherewithal to get the information that the big banks do. So who are you kidding? When you go to some of the smaller firms, they may have an expertise in a sub-asset class, but they're probably not great in multi-assets, okay? I much prefer to go to, and again, depending on their expertise, and do your due diligence. It's not a blanket thing of, let's go with these guys, or don't go with these guys. Look at where their expertise lies. Multifamily office, you're right, it's just a bank. Okay, but they don't have the title bank because they don't have a banking license. They have a different kind of license, hopefully, because some don't have licenses and use loopholes. And by the way, well, worse, I dealt with a client in Palm Beach, French lady, who was with a multifamily office for 15 years, didn't understand the data coming out. I went and investigated them for her. And as far as I'm concerned, they're a Ponzi scheme. And unfortunately, as I'm not the injured party, I can't turn them into the SEC. SEC rules are stupid. You have to be personally impacted. My client doesn't want her name in the press because she doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of her friends because she took some of her friends to these guys. And I got out probably 90% of her money back from these guys, which was a miracle. And she should be very happy. Look very carefully at multifamily offices, careful of what they're offering. Okay, if it's just because it says family office because that's cool, don't go for cool. Okay, go for safe and sturdy, right? Again, I agree with you. Multifamily office, RIA, broker, independent asset manager, they all come into the same bucket. It's not a single family office. It will never replace a single family office. Again, look at everyone, put them on the playing field, do an RFP, do your due diligence, do background checks. Look at how do they custody the assets, what funds are they using, what kind of reporting systems, who is doing the audits. There's a lot of work that goes into that. If you want a single family office, we can have that discussion. It doesn't fit everyone. There is a minimum size of assets that I would tell people to do. But that doesn't mean you should have one either. I told a $1 billion liquid family not to have a single family office because what they wanted to do did not make sense to have a single family office, even though they had $1 billion cash, right? They wanted 80% in fixed income, go to a couple of banks. You don't need, 10 people, 6 people in an office, pay that expense because they're never going to be able to do fixed income what a bank can do. That's just reality. So be careful that people get taken by terms. Don't be sold by the terms. Like, dig under the surface and take a look. I'd much prefer to come and work with Mike than go to a multifamily office who probably doesn't have the expertise, the wherewithal, the history, the knowledge, the access.
Thank you. And
My pleasure.
And Mark, you had come to me and I bounced it over to Samy because if I would have mentioned, you would think I'm being biased because I run an institutional wealth management firm and we act as a multifamily office for 10 families in this office and, throughout organization, a lot more. But a lot of people who we work with at JP Morgan have multifamily offices and it's 4 guys running around, very attractive, good looking, smart individuals, but they don't have the resources and the capacities that a much larger institution has.
And so they'll charge that fee and then they'll probably go back to some banks and charge them fees.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
by the way, depending on where you are in the world, so in Switzerland, which is really interesting, they have a system called the tiers gérants, so third-party managers. The banks actually pay commissions back to the multifamily offices to put the assets with them,
Yeah.
be it in their funds or otherwise. So, like I said, scratch the surface and see what's going on because it's not that transparent. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but there's a bridge in between. That is, I call it investment club, or I call it, you can call it family office, but it's 5, 6 families with different expertise. They actually do a collaboration.
But that's different. That's a club, not a
But
family office.
they call it multi-family office, but it's essentially ran by the same groups of 5, 6, 7 families, and they know what they're doing.
But it's run by the families, not by banks, not by people who are being
not by
paid a
the
fee.
bank. Well, they hire the bankers, like I can give you examples, one in Panama that 4 families, but it's led by one of the families, and the patriarch went and hired the guy that was running renewable energy in London for Morgan Stanley and created a renewable energy division for the whole Central America. About 3, 4 families, and now they invest in everything.
And I think that's great again, but you still need to do your due diligence. So I was working with a family in Ohio, multi-billion-dollar family. They hired their M&A attorney to head their family office. That did not work out well. You know what he did? He went to put a sleeve of money with his son in a brokerage firm. Guess what happened? It blew up. And I go, oh, you're going to get sued by the kids. No, it's okay. I know the family really well. It's like, no, you're going to get sued by the kids. Like, it's going to come. And if it doesn't come now, when they're old enough and they're smart enough, it'll come. Because as a trustee, you're always on the fucking hook. Like, don't think you're getting away with it. So I like investment clubs when you're sharing due diligence to get the benefit of reducing the cost of getting into an investment and using someone's expertise. Because a lot of family offices don't have expertise in direct deals. So they get into deals they don't comprehend and they don't know how to get out. So if you don't have the infrastructure, investment clubs, groups of family offices, I think can be very powerful. But again, you still need the infrastructure, you need the rules in place, you need to think about how you put it together. What are the rules to get in? What are the rules to get out?
Right.
Yeah.
Just an observation right along those lines. When I used to be the CIO for 3-4 years ago, and we tried to work with a few other families that our principals happen to know reasonably well. And the place where it actually did not work out was, favorable entry and exit into the deal. I mean, we thought that it was our right to get in because we sourced a deal. And ideally that should have worked well, depending on the meritocracy of who sort of put it in. And that's why the whole structure came apart.
But was it kind of a verbal conversation or was it something in contract?
More of a verbal conversation.
And that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. Professionalize. You put it in writing. We're going in. We're going to go in at these terms. If we see this type of return, we're exiting. What are the strategies for exit? Right? What happens if we have a disagreement? How do we work it out? Like a shareholders agreement, you've got to have those things in place. It's about professionalizing rather than a club, which is a loose term, which I think will lead to more issues. It needs to be more concrete. It needs to be really done. A business contract, you're getting into a deal, right? No different than getting married, right? You're in bed with each other. That's it. And the divorce will be very costly and painful. Sorry.
That's fair enough. And it's a great analogy to get people's minds going. Want to just switch. So we dealt with multifamily offices there. And Clint, I'm going to throw this your way to start off. We're going to go to multi-generational families. And certainly you being part of a 6th generation is very interesting. But let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, the generations are represented by those in their 70s, those in their 50s, and those in their 30s. But I would think that'd be fairly common. As you think about that, what are the roles of these different groupings of people within the family office?
Well, beyond the founder generation, I think it's just stewardship. And I think it's kind of like an obligation, regardless of the wealth, for the senior generation to do good, to parent and pass along the core, principles, values, or here's kind of how this works, bring them to some family meetings, and let them know, here's some things I wish we would have done differently. Maybe you guys can, as the next generation, make this a little better. And, but it's never going to be perfect. And if you don't want to bring them in until it is perfect, well, then they'll never come in. So you almost have to bring them in, the next generation, to kind of see you stumble through some things. And then they'll be like, okay, well, I saw grandfather Joe and, great, I saw them struggle through that. So what we're going through is normal, and conflict is good as long as there's general trust about either the governing documents that guide the family system or the person kind of leading it. And I'm a big fan of non-family members as well, because I was a family member CFO, and I felt like I probably could have got away with more than a non-family member CFO, and that didn't feel good. It didn't feel right to me. So we went with a non-family member CFO that does a great job, and he fights for his job every day, so where family members, some of them may not. So I'm a big fan of that. But I think every generation, you have to kind of get ahead of it. Don't wait till you're 70 to start thinking about this. And if you're 70 and thinking about it, that's okay. At least you're thinking about it and trying to do something about it. But trying to mentor, succession is always going on through a multi-generations. It's just always going on. It's not something that happens all at once. You just have to, and you get better at it. It's not something we just wake up and know how to do, but you get better at succession. But every generation needs the model behavior for the next generation. And that's how you succeed, in my opinion. So,
Clint, I love that term stewardship. I think that's really important, right? Because not every child in every generation is going to be able to lead the business, lead the family office, manage assets. Everyone has different skill sets and different desires and wishes, right? And I look at my kids as my teachers, right? Because I have 3 kids, and they're very, very different people with very different personalities, doing very different things, and none of them, thank God, are like me. And I think if you look at any family and you look at multiple children and multiple generations, they're all different. So not because they're a family member, they have to come into the family business, or they have to come into the family office, or they have to understand financial assets. So I like that term stewardship, kind of guiding them, hand-holding them, enabling them. Financial literacy, something that actually Fiduciary Trust does a really good job around, is working with the families on financial literacy. You do it with the Marlins, you do it with a number of different places. And I think that's stewardship. That's ensuring that they have an understanding. That doesn't mean they need to go do it themselves.
Yeah. And I think also understand that succession, it's a process and not an event. It's not, okay, today, it's little by little. When the next generation shows the aptitude, the interest, the passion, and they build trust, you allow them to step in even a little bit before they're ready. Because that's saying no one's a prophet in their own land, especially when that prophet is your son and you saw them growing up. No, he's not ready. She's not ready. He's not ready. No, because you saw them when they're little. But as soon as they show the aptitude, give them the benefit of the doubt and trust them, and give them the chance before you actually think they're ready. And 90% of the time, I've seen it work that way. And the communication, the trust, the love, And if you think you enjoyed running your business, you're gonna love to see your kids being successful and creating and expanding. That feels even better than any success you had.
Keep in mind a very important term, that most people have children. Wealthy people have heirs. And that's really important because it's a mindset. So it changes everything. It's a mindset. I have kids, they have heirs. And because they see that, look, I dealt with a family where the child in the second generation, and we're talking they're worth over $20 billion, at 65 had to go and ask dad permission to buy an A5. Okay? He's an heir, and all I would hear from him is, when dad dies, I'm going to get part of the money and I'm going to do what I want. Right? And that's a horrible thing to hear from someone. When dad dies, I'm going to be able to do. And that's the difference between children and heirs, and stewardship is so important. Understanding the abilities, making them feel part of something, enabling them to get out of your shadow, right? And it's really important, out of the parent's shadow, let them create their own shadow. And it's very, very hard. It's much harder coming from a family of wealth than coming from a modest family. I know we've got a little mess.
We've got a little bit more than 5 minutes left, but I guess my question is, and you actually bring up a great point, which is that people are living longer than ever and they're staying more active than ever. And so when you guys are planning with some of these entrepreneurs who begin their family offices, do you try to figure out how long can they maintain that active lifestyle? What does it mean for planning for the next generation? I mean, as you said, people are saying, I can't wait for the next, my father, whoever the entrepreneur to die. You know, but these people are going to have fuller lives than ever. So how do you guys make that work? I mean, nothing is cookie cutter anymore. Nothing's vanilla. Your thoughts?
I just think you share the information. People have to know what there is. Is it 50 million? Is it 500 million? People have to know in general. And there's got to be some form of respect for money, respect for others from no little. When someone comes to the table and brings something, thank you. When they take away, thank you. The woman who helps out around the house, thank you, thank you. Those things, if they don't see it done and modeled as children by their parents, it's really hard for the children now to be, you're not going to run a successful business if you don't respect and trust people. So I think that starts at a really early age. As far as
just longevity
and kind of like how long can we live in this lifestyle? I think
exactly right,
because a lot of times kids have a great lifestyle until they're 65 and parents are 85 or 90, and now they need a lot more assets because their healthcare is different and they've given a lot away. So now whatever's left is, I don't know how long this is going to last me. So sometimes it's very sad when someone doesn't have to think about that because they're 60 or 65. So the earlier you start, the better.
So I'm going to take a different approach on this. So first of all, I think on the getting the kids to understand the responsibility of wealth, philanthropy. I'm a big fan. Set up family foundations, get everyone involved, understand their values, get them involved in where do they want to give, let it be a discussion around the table. And I've done this with a couple of families, and especially when the kids are younger, and I've been doing this with a family where the kids are 15 and 17. And we said, we started a family foundation. We're going to be putting about 200 million into it. And we said, this amount of money every year will be paid out. You're going to be responsible for this. Go do your due diligence, come back to us with names. Let's look at this and let's see what we're going to do. So you make them responsible. And I actually forced them to go and volunteer, right? And I've actually dragged a couple of them by their feet. I've sent a couple to Ecuador to work in hospitals, all kinds of stuff. So that's one. Two, I think, yes, we're going to start seeing people live longer and longer. And part of that is just medicine and the world we live in, and things are changing, right? We're seeing a lot more octogenarians. We're seeing a lot of more centenarians, bless you. So one thing I've liked and I've seen with a lot of families is actually stating that at a certain point, they're going to retire from the business. That doesn't mean you retire from the family. You become a chairman. You can oversee, you can give your input, but you've got to leave room for the next gen, because if you don't, they're going to get frustrated and bad things will happen, right? And bad things could be family feuds. Bad things could be they'll make stupid decisions because they're so desperate to prove themselves that they will do more harm than good. So I think actually concretizing and saying, I will step down at age 75 and I'm going to pass you the reins has value. Hard conversations to have, not easy. but we'll find dad something else to do. I came across a guy, it was incredible. That father and son started a new business. Dad was 98. He started a new business at 98 years of age. And by the way, this isn't one-offs. I've seen this. There was one of the shipping families in Sweden.
Yeah.
Dad at 98 started a new business. Yeah, fantastic. By the way, he was in charge of it till he was 102, and then he died. Another guy with his son started a company, Dumatok, in Israel. They created this protein instead of sugar. And again, dad started at 98. He was the inventor. Like it's great. So find them other things to do, because if you just put them out to pasture, they will die. They need things to do. They need to stay active. So be mindful. Don't just say, hey, I want dad to step to one side, because don't forget, they put you where you are.
Clint, any final words on this, and we'll wrap up after you.
Not really. I think that's a big subject. Wealth creates options that, everyday people don't have. And some people do really well managing those options. Some people don't. Usually the people that create the wealth are pretty good about managing those options, but the next generation is not, because it wasn't an earned thing, and they're struggling with lifestyle and, shadows and all that. But I think if you can get a hold, it's a philosophical question about if you can be happy, is really understanding those options and making decisions of what you want to do with your life, with your wealth, with your kids, transitioning to the next generation, getting help to do that, knowing kind of where you want to step down and how to step down, even though that can be very uncomfortable. So to me, those are the things that create transition, create happy lives. But all the options that come with wealth can be a detriment to some people. And I've seen, especially like sudden wealth syndrome, if y'all probably seen, is not a good thing and creates a lot of unhappy people. And athletes go through this, and it's sad, but it is an issue. So I think, people are living longer, transition still needs to happen. I'm just a big proponent of constantly thinking about succession, whether we're living to 102 or we're dying at 70, it doesn't matter. That's just part of life as transition. So.
Well, I think we've gotten a lot of great insight, Marty, from this panel. A very talented group. I had so many more things at different areas I wanted to go into, but that happens with every one of these. Fantastic job. Thank you, Sam.